In the game called Dragon Slayer Academy, players progress through the academy. After graduation, they are tasked with subjugating various monsters and bosses. As a veteran of this game, our protagonist became the strongest support in the rankings. A horde of monsters rushes toward our group of heroes. The monster charges forward with its mouth wide open. Then the hero Lee Sel positions himself to attack the crowd of enemies. And we are shown another heroine, exterminating part of the horde. Right after that, we see a black knight facing a giant serpent, and he was preparing to attack. Without hesitating, he drives his sword into the giant serpent's skin, splitting it in two. The knight Ko Johan lands on the ground. After defeating the horde of monsters, the heroes gather in a ruined arena, with the protagonist thinking about what he loved most in the game. Going deeper into the tomb, he says that he found a magic stone. With the stone in hand, the protagonist reflects on the hero creation system. While offering a magic stone to an NPC, he thinks that with the hero creation system, he can develop a hero's story so that they become S rank. The NPC then gently grasps the stone, which soon merges with her body, thus becoming a vampire queen, making her his 1000th character to become an S-rank adventurer. Back in real life, he yawns while reflecting on what he should do now. Taking off his headphones, he says there is nothing left to do. He reflects that he has already reached S-rank in every class and maybe he should try creating other accounts to start over from scratch. Looking at the notification on his monitor screen, he reflects that a notification had arrived. Then he realizes, his eyes shining, that there is some very interesting news. Receiving a new mission. The protagonist states that he had never heard of such a mission before. Then he sees that the mission difficulty is EX rank and that its objective is to prevent the destruction of the world. While thinking about the mission's new difficulty, he thinks that EX rank heroes might also exist, since the highest he had ever seen was S rank. Excited by the novelty, he frantically clicks his mouse, thinking that he would never miss this additional content in his life. And then the notification appears, informing him that the mission is finally about to begin. He is then teleported to a forest, and he reflects on whether this might be the forest inside the game. He recalls that it looked like the tutorial forest, and wonders if he is really starting from zero. A status window appears, and he notices that all his stats are at 0. Then a notification about the reincarnation rewards appeared, informing him about the copy skill. He wonders what that is, and soon comes to the conclusion that it must be the perks of reincarnation. While he reflects on his new abilities, a pop-up appears. The pop-up shows the tutorial objective, saying that his goal is to survive for 10 minutes. However, he hears a thunderous sound coming from above him, which catches his attention. In the sky, 2 giant dragons fight each other violently without stopping. Looking up, he is startled by the presence of the 2 dragons. Right after that, he starts running desperately, trying to escape. But while he flees, he realizes that the dragon is preparing to launch an attack. He soon realizes that this would be the perfect moment to use his copy skill. As the battle between the furious beasts unfolds, our protagonist thinks that in order to copy the beast's abilities, he must observe the exact moment they are unleashed. Then an explosion happens in the forest because of the intense battle between the 2 dragons. Meanwhile, our protagonist carefully watches the dragon in order to use his copy skill, and then a notification is displayed saying that he successfully copied an S-rank elemental skill. Looking at the dragon from behind a tree, he reflects that he did not expect to get an S-rank skill so soon. However, he reminds himself that without a greater amount of mana, he would not be able to use the newly acquired skill. He then notices that the direction of the wind had changed drastically and becomes alert. In front of him, the red dragon has gathered a large amount of fire in its mouth, preparing for an attack. At the same time, the blue dragon also prepared for an attack. Seeing the imminent attack, he realizes that both are going to use their strongest attacks. Knowing the danger, he starts running to get away from the impact area. Then the red dragon fired a breath of fire at its opponent, and as a consequence, the blue dragon also unleashes its electric breath. Running desperately, the protagonist tries to escape the explosion coming right behind him. Soon the notification informs him that he completed the first tutorial, and the second phase of the tutorial is promptly presented to the protagonist, saying that he must board the train to the academy, changing the scene to a train station. Inside the cabin, a young man says there are no seats and asks to sit with a girl who is seated there. Seeing that she does not react, he asks if she is sleeping on the table. At that moment, the protagonist abruptly enters the room, asking if there was an empty seat. Turning around, the other young man says there is a spot, but that the girl was not answering him. Waking up suddenly, the girl lifts her head and looks at the 2 young men. Pointing to the empty seat, he asks if he can sit next to her, and she agrees. Sitting down, he introduces himself as Kim Ho, while she says she is Seo Yain. After that, Yain invited the other boy to sit down, and he thanked her and introduced himself as Hien. Very grateful, Hien promises to return the favor, while the protagonist asks why he was late. In response, he said he had been observing the dragons for a long time, which makes our protagonist remember the dragons from his tutorial. As the train begins to move, the journey toward the academy finally starts. At that moment, he thinks that he didn't know the 2 new classmates, and while observing the people in the train cars, he realizes he doesn't recognize any of the students or staff. Because of that, he understands that he needs to stay alert to all future changes in the story's events. Then he notices that the girl beside him is staring at him, It is revealed that Seo Yain possessed eyes capable of analyzing all the attributes of the people around her. When analyzing Hyun, her status window showed only attributes she considered ordinary. But when she looks at Kim Ho, she sees a status full of question marks, making her think he is special. But noticing the girl's fixed stare, he turns and asks, "Why are you looking at me like that?" Deep in thought, the girl remembers advice her mother had given her about being kind to people. Having an idea, she then picks up her luggage with determination. From inside the suitcase, she took out a package full of chocolate cookies. Holding it out, the white-haired girl asks if the boy would like to eat one of the cookies. Slightly awkward, he thanks her and asks if she made the sweets herself. Confirming it, the girl merely comments that the taste is at least decent. While eating the cookie, the protagonist asks Kim Ho if that thing beside him is a sword. Kim Ho then explains that it is a sacred relic, but it is still sealed from any kind of use. Pulling out another weapon, he says that his current battle companion is an ordinary iron sword. Enthusiastically, Kim Ho asks whether it wouldn't be better to use a sword made of a more durable material. Suddenly, another student appears in the compartment, asking everyone present for permission to enter. Seeing that the boy had no intention of sitting down, Kim Ho asked the reason for his visit. Showing a flyer, he said he had come to promote his fundraising service for the academy. At that, our protagonist asks whether his service includes breaking school rules, and whether he had been chased by committee members. Looking outside, the newcomer says that maybe he had been too obvious, while our protagonist says that he seemed anxious. Meanwhile, the door slowly begins to open, revealing a new arrival. Seeing who had just entered the place, the brown-haired young man is startled. In the hallway, the disciplinary committee appears and says they know all about the brown-haired young man's scheme. Meanwhile, our protagonist thinks about the committee's early arrival in the game's story. We are told that the committee is the one that receives reports about rules that have been broken, and that they are responsible for applying the proper punishment to whoever violated them. Holding out her hand, the leader insists that the boy hand over what he shouldn't have. At that, the boy asks why the committee is chasing him, but he ends up being subdued in the middle of his sentence. With her hand charged, the girl reveals herself as a lightning attribute mage. Holding a cookie, Kim Ho sees a chance to copy a skill. At that moment, Kim Ho lets the cookie fall to the floor while the young scammer explains that he is not involved in any kind of scam. Putting on her gloves, she warns that since he won't surrender so easily, he will have to be punished. Then she snaps her fingers, preparing her next skill. Then the committee leader fired a bird-shaped attack, threatening to hit the boy. Trying to defend himself from the blow, he puts his hands in front of his face. Kim then reaches out his hand, trying to intervene in all the commotion. In doing so, he ends up intervening in the attack. Grabbing the bird of electricity with his hands, surprised, she asked whether the scammer had an accomplice. Stepping 1 foot out of the cabin, someone says he is not an accomplice. It was Kim, who says that he had only dropped his cookie and would like to pick it back up. Confused, the girl processes this whole story. Then the committee leader's assistant tells Kim Ho to stop this nonsense and step away from there. Hyun suggests that the committee members be more careful, and that if he plans to start a fight, he will not back down. A heavy atmosphere then fills the place, all because of a cookie. To resolve the situation, the girl offers a dessert coupon. And then she turns to the scammer, preparing to apply his punishment. Meanwhile, Kim Ho reflects that his newly acquired skill will be very useful in his hands. Holding a wig, she explains that the boy stole it from a staff member. As she leaves, the committee leader advises him to stay away from Shin. Soon, the entire committee group leaves that train car. Hyun asks if those students are from the disciplinary committee, and Shin confirms it, saying that they are the academy's elite. Then Shin introduces the leader as the granddaughter of the Lord of Thunder, from the Song family. And then he introduces all the members of the disciplinary committee, all of them being from important families. Waving, he says goodbye and leaves. When asked why he threw the cookie, the MC replies that he was just curious about the mage. Then he asks what the boy knew about the mage's abilities, leaving him thoughtful. The boy comments that from what he had seen, the mage was focusing more on control than damage. Kim says he was half right, and imitating the mage's magic. Comments that the skill was called Hummingbird because it resembled a bird's flight, and that its flight performance depended on how good its caster was. He also comments that if the girl were a good caster, she would have changed its route when she threw the cookie. Even so, the bird flew to his hand, which he says was caused by her lack of combat experience. The boy comments that he didn't know a spell could reveal so much, while Kim thinks that wasn't all, because the girl used an E-rank skill with D-rank power, so she either had great talent or a lot of mana. Horan comments that it must be fate for them to meet, but the boy says that was going too far. Then the boy says he was being too kind, and that Kim could count on him for anything. In that case, Kim asks him to follow him. Pulling away a cloth, he reveals an old slot machine, and explains that this train used to be for tourism, and that this was the casino. While inserting the coin, Horan asks if it isn't broken, and Kim replies that it probably is, but the machine makes a strange noise, and they conclude that it really was. Until the machine stops on a secret event, and pulling the lever, Kim thinks that this was a mandatory choice. Then a bottle drops out of the machine. Frustrated, he thinks he wasn't expecting that. At that moment, the boy asks why Kim came along, and he explains that it was because it was against the rules. So Hyun asks if he was there just as a guard, which the boy